What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having a spectacular day. Today we're going to be talking about all things okra, and I think I've got a way, even with a broke back, that I can plant some okra. I've been wanting to plant some more here for the last few weeks or so. Now just getting around to it. We got about a day break between some rain. It's been raining every afternoon, and I think we're good today, at least to this afternoon. Then we got tropical storm or maybe even Hurricane Elsa coming in. It's going to give us some more rain. So hopefully we can get this okra planted before that rain comes in. I want to talk to you a little bit about this book I've been reading. So this book right here is called The Whole Okra. They misspelled it on the front page there, or on the cover. But it's called The Whole Okra. Written by a guy named Chris Smith, and I've actually met this guy. We used to do some trade shows, Mother Earth News Fair in Asheville, and this guy used to work for So True Seed, which is out of Asheville. So I met him a time or two when we used to go up to Asheville every year for that trade show. And he's from England, I believe, somewhere across the pond, and he wrote this book that's about nothing but okra. All kind of really good stuff in here, and I've been reading through it. I haven't quite finished it yet. It's a really good book. I'll put a link in the description below so you can grab this and check this out if you really like okra and want to learn about all things okra. It's got a lot of good recipes in here. It talks about the origin of okra. It talks about how to cook okra if you don't think you like okra. It talks about the different varieties of okra, how the smoother pod ones are better for pickling and the ones with more ridges are better for frying. I mean, just all kind of good stuff in here. And then it also, he's done a bunch of trials over the years, talks about all these different okra varieties. I mean, varieties you've never even heard of before. Some of these I've heard of, but some of these I haven't. It has a picture of each one. Really cool. Like there's a variety called UGA Red. I guess the University of Georgia developed. Never heard of that one. Stelly okra, red velvet okra. I mean, he's got like 60 varieties in here that he trialed. So lots and lots of good stuff in this book. It's a fun read, but it's also a good resource to have. And since I've been reading this book, I've just kind of set out, just made up my mind. I want to create my own little okra seed bank and try to acquire as many of these varieties as I can, and maybe grow a few of them every year and kind of have my own little okra seed bank in the fridge with all these different heirloom open pollinated okra types. A couple moons ago I did a video talking about how I'm probably not really going to grow jambalaya okra anymore. And we used to grow it because the productivity, but now we're not selling our produce anymore. So I'm a little more interested in some of these novelty okra types, some of these old-timey okra types. And we're just going to try over the years to acquire as many of those as we can and have us our own little neat seed bank in the freezer there. So currently right now I have 4 varieties planted in a little plot over there. I've got this Jing orange, and all the varieties I've planted this year is the first time I've grown those. So I've got the Jing orange right here, which is probably the best tasting raw okra I've ever had. It's really good. Really like this variety. We've got the emerald green velvet, which is this long smooth variety. I really like this one because it stays tender even when it gets on up 10 inches long sometimes. So really liking this variety. Probably the least favorite of the 3 that I have producing right now would be this Perkins long pod. It's alright. It's not a bad okra. I just don't like it quite as good as this green velvet here. It looks similar to the green velvet, but it's got ridges on it, whereas the green velvet is smooth. So this green velvet here, when picked small, as the book indicates, would be a good variety to pickle in jars, because when it's smooth like this, you can pack them in the jars a lot better than you can one with a lot of ridges. Nice, neat little interesting tidbit in that book there. I also have, and it's just now starting to produce, I got a couple pods on it about that long, so we'll be picking it soon. Heirloom variety that a viewer up in North Georgia sent us, and their last name was Ruiz, so I'm just calling it Ruiz okra. So I got 4 different kind of heirloom open pollinated varieties growing now. And then we're going to add to that today. I've got, I think, 6 more varieties to plant and try. So several weeks ago, I just went online scouring different seed retailers, trying to find as many varieties I could find, heirloom, open pollinated varieties that I haven't grown before, to do in this little trial we're going to start today. So I'll show you what I've got here. So I found this variety called Alabama Red. Never grown it before. Got that from Baker Creek. Also from Baker Creek, they didn't have it in stock, but a viewer sent me some of their leftovers. They got this variety called Okinawan Pink here. So we're going to try that. And then these 3 right here came from Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. We've got Burmese okra, we've got choppy okra, and we've got Cajun Jewel okra right here. So we got those 5 varieties there, and I don't know much about those varieties because I've never grown them before. So it's going to be interesting to see as they grow. We can kind of compare them, compare the pods, look at the taste of them, see how long they get before they get tough, all kind of good stuff like that. Compare the production as well. And then I've got this variety here. And the guy that sent me this said his dad, they just call it fat okra. So we're going to give this one a try. I got to get the seeds out of these pods here, but I got several of these pods, and there's a good many seeds in there. I can hear them just by shaking them around there. So, funny story. I was looking for a domain to start us a website for Lazy Dog Farm where we can write gardening blogs, share recipes, maybe even sell some merch at some point. And I went online to search for lazydogfarm.com. Well, it turns out someone already had it. And I don't know if you know much about buying domains and stuff, but if it has common words in it, domains can be pretty pricey. I mean, it's nothing to pay $5,000–$10,000 for a domain if it's a popular name. So, and lazydogfarm.com is nothing out of the ordinary. So some guy had it, and this never works because I've tried buying some domains before, and I found his contact information at the bottom of this page and sent him an email and said, hey, we have a YouTube channel, we like to garden, look, you know, would you like to sell this domain? Like I said, that never works, and if they do ever contact you back, usually they want a premium for the site because they know you want it and they know what they got. Well, this guy was super nice. I think his name was Michael, and he sent me a email back and said, hey, I took a look at your channel, I like what you're about, and I'll sell you the site. You name a price. So I gave him a price, and I think it was under what he could have charged me for it if he wanted to, but you know, there's still good people in this world, and he just liked what we did, liked what we stood for, and that worked out really well for us. So I do now own the domain lazydogfarm.com. Haven't built anything on it yet. We're working on that. But he had what was on the site previously, and I don't know if it's still there, but it's on lazydogfarm.net as well if you want to read it. He created this long, funny, kind of satirical story about small town America that's pretty humorous if you want to go check that out and read it. But anyway, that was just a great blessing there to be able to get the domain lazydogfarm.com, and that guy was willing to sell it to us. So as we got to talking back and forth, as I was buying that domain from him, he said his dad had this okra variety, this fat okra here, that he wanted me to try. So we're going to give that a try. And sometimes with these that people have named themselves or whatever, you know, you don't ever know if this is actually the same thing as something else that's already out there, or if it is indeed something different. So we'll just see as it grows out how it does. But that's a big pot of okra right there. Really excited about trying this one. So right behind me here is where we're going to be doing this next okra trial with all 6 of these varieties I just showed you. This is my biggest plot. Way on the end there's where we had all those field peas. I had a buddy come and mow those down for me. We'll probably plant a cover crop on most of this plot here, but this area here closest to me, where we were trying to grow some peanuts, they just didn't germinate for us. So we're going to do our okra trials right here. Yesterday, Brooklyn and Titus came out here and got this spot prepped for me. She took the wheel hoe and kind of cultivated a little bit, made a furrow, put some of that Nature Safe 855 in it, and then you know, covered that up. So we got some little ridges there, 3 of them. So we got 3 rows here. I went ahead and gave them plenty of space, about 4 or 5 feet apart, so we can really look at and compare these varieties here. So we can see we got 1 row there, 1 row there, and 1 row there. So we got 6 varieties. We're going to do 2 varieties per row. Some varieties I got more seeds than others, so it won't be equal half and half, but we'll get enough of each variety to have a fair trial here. Now you might be asking yourself, how are you going to keep these varieties from cross-pollinating? How are you going to keep these varieties true when you're growing all these different varieties in the same area? So okra is a self-pollinating plant. It's not like a squash or a cucumber where you've got a male flower and a female flower, and you need the bee to transfer the pollen from the male flower to the female flower for the fruit to actually develop. Okra makes some beautiful flowers. If you've ever grown okra, you know that. Looks kind of like a hibiscus flower because it's in the same family as hibiscus. So cross-pollination isn't quite as prevalent as you would see in a cucurbit where you have male and female flowers, but you can still get cross-pollination with okra because the bees love these flowers. You'll see them in here in the morning time feeding all over these guys. Now when we plant several open pollinated varieties close to one another, the pods are still going to be true to variety, but the seeds within inside that pod could have been cross-pollinated, or the plant could have been cross-pollinated, and therefore those seeds inside that pod may not be true to variety. It could be a mixture of several varieties you have planted nearby. Now in that okra book, he mentions that the isolation distance, if you want no cross-pollination, is up to about half a mile or so. So you can imagine if you're doing a big okra trial, that's almost impossible to plant a bunch of different varieties all a half a mile apart. You'd have to have lots of plots of land to really pull that off. So he mentioned a neat little trick that he did when he was trialing all these different varieties in Asheville. So you see this flower right here that the okra makes, and this will eventually become an okra pod. These flowers are only here for 1 day. So each flower is only open for 1 day. That's what he mentions in the book. And at the end of the day, this flower will close up, it'll fall off. Sometimes some of those petals will stick to the end of that okra pod, and you can kind of pull them off when you harvest it. But this is only here for 1 day. So what he said he would do to keep the bees from actually messing with this flower is they would come out first thing in the morning, like before daylight, before the bees started moving around, and he'd take a little bag and put it over a particular flower of a particular variety. And he would leave that bag on there until the flower shriveled up and it couldn't be accessed by the bees anymore, a day or so. And then he would take a piece of string or something and kind of flag that pod that was developing there. So because he knew no bees had touched that flower, and that pod there was going to be true, the seeds in that pod were going to be true to variety, even though it was planted amongst all these other varieties. So that's what I'm going to do. We can grow all these different varieties together. We can enjoy the pods. We can see what the pods look like. The plants, the pods are going to be true to variety. The seeds will prevent cross-pollination by bagging them on a few of them here and there, a few of the pods. That way we can save some true seeds and kind of keep our okra stock going. So I think that's going to work really well, and I'm excited about trying that. And then that way we can know we've got the true variety. We don't have any cross-pollinated seed. I don't know if y'all can see this, but I made me a little planting map here, what's going to go in each row. So row 1 is going to get Okinawa pink and Alabama red. Row 2, choppy and Cajun jewel, or maybe that's choppy. Is it choppy or choppy? If y'all know, let me know. Row 3 is going to get the Burmese and this fat okra here. Now this fat okra here, I've already kind of took the seeds out of one of these pods here, and there's a lot of seeds in each of these pods. I think one of these pods may have enough seeds for what we're going to do, but I'll save these other 2. Keep those in the fridge and they should store well. I'll go ahead and take the seeds out of them, and then we'll just store the seeds in the bag. I'll show you how we're going to do that in a minute. So if you've been keeping up, we're on week 3 of my back being broke. Still got 5 more weeks to go wearing this brace. And doctor's orders are no bending, no lifting, no pulling, no holding anything heavier than a milk jug. But as they say, when there's a will, there's a way. So I've got a way to do this with this pipe right here. I don't have to bend over, and I can just set this pipe where I want it, shoot me an okra seed down this pipe here, and I've got a little single tine cultivator I can cover those guys up with. And it's gonna be just fine right here. So this is how you plant okra when you can't bend over. Now obviously I couldn't did the bed prep or the ground prep with my back. That's why I had to get Brooklyn to do that for me, but I can do the planting with this pipe right here. So we're gonna try to put these guys probably about a foot apart or so. I'm gonna stick that pipe down in the ground there and make a little indentation so I know where to cover my seeds up. We're just gonna shoot it down just like that. Come over about a foot and a half or so. Make a little indentation. Send another okra seed down the chute. It may take a little longer, but we'll get them all planted.
Let the dust settle, let go of the pedal, there's too much here. Let these towers turn to rivers, let these instincts steal.
All right. That took a little longer than it normally would have, but we got her did. The pipe trick worked really well. You just had to be careful because I was using the pipe to make a hole. Make sure to kind of hit it against your foot every now and then, keep it from clogging up so you were still dropping okra seeds through it. And this little hoe right here, this little lightweight hoe I've had for a while, was a perfect trick for covering those seeds with a broke back. This thing doesn't weigh nothing at all, and I was able to kind of pull a little dirt over them and just kind of tamp them down, pack in the soil with that right there, because we got some rain coming, we know for sure, and I don't want these things to wash away. So I kind of packed them in there good. Hopefully we'll get some good germination. Soil's warm enough, we got moisture coming, we'll see what happens. So I showed you how we're going to use that bag trick to make sure the pods we're saving for seed aren't cross-pollinated. I'm going to call that the bag and flag trick. That's what we're going to call it from here on out. And when we start doing that, I'll show you how we do it. We'll see how good it works. But a lot of people ask us, how should you store leftover seed, or if you're saving seed from your own crops, what's the best way to store them? And you can put them in the fridge or the freezer. I usually just put them in the fridge. And the way I've been doing it is I take this, say, paper seed packet. Most all companies are using these paper seed packets now. And I'll put these inside a Ziploc bag and put them in the fridge. You just don't want to put this paper bag, paper seed packet inside the fridge because it can soak up a little bit of moisture. So I put them inside a Ziploc bag, a bunch of them at a time, keep them in that fridge that way. But I've got a new system I want to show you guys. So you may or may not know this, but these foil or mylar bags work really good for storing seeds, as long as they're not penetrable to light, as long as it's dark inside there. So I found some of these on Amazon. I think I paid 15 bucks for 100 of these bags. I thought it was a pretty good deal. And they had several different sizes. I got all these small ones here because most of my seed saving batches will be small, but I may get some bigger ones in the future if I'm saving some corn or something like that, you know, a pound or so at the time. But these right here are resealable. They got a little zip on them there. You can also vacuum seal it at the top there. If you want to seal this for a long time, you could heat seal it at the top. Now these are not gusseted at the bottom. I say they're not, they might be. Hold on just a second. Oh, they are gusseted at the bottom. So they will stand up if you want them to stand up, but we'll probably just lay them flat. I've got some white labels coming in the mail, so I'll just put those on there. Label when the grow out was, what the variety is, and if it's seed I'm saving from leftover stuff I bought, I'll put the last posted germ date on there. These are going to work really, really good. They're going to store seeds better than those paper packets from the seed companies, and I can open them and reopen them easier. These paper packets, once you reopen and open these several times, sometimes that can kind of get wore out. So this will make it a lot easier to store our seeds. I'll put a link below to these guys here if you want to try this little system out. If you read the description in the comments, it's pretty obvious that these things were designed, or a lot of people are using them to, let's just say, transport substances through the airport without them being smelled. Because there's a lot of things about them being smell proof and stuff like that. But we're just using them for seeds, and I think they're going to work really well for that. That's going to be a nice little system for having our own little seed bank here. So like I said, this video is going to be a lot about okra. We talked about varieties of okra. We talked about cross-pollination and saving seeds with okra. We planted some okra. And now I want to go show you one of my favorite ways to cook the okra from our garden. Before we do that, I did want to mention one thing. This book here has a whole chapter devoted to okra slime. I know a lot of people don't like okra because they get hung up about the slime. They don't like the texture, they don't like the sliminess of it. But there's certain ways you can cook it so it's not slimy. And you'll hear a lot of people in the South, if they hear someone don't like okra, they'll say, well, you just haven't had it cooked right. And that's kind of what he says in this book here. And one of the ways is just cook it on really, really high heat. But there's a whole chapter in here about the okra slime, different ways to use the slime, and how to cook okra so it's not slimy. So if you're hung up on the slime, you may want to give that chapter a read. But let's go inside and make a nice little okra dish. All right guys, so I'm going to show you how I make okra and tomatoes, and there are lots of different ways to do this, and you may have a better way, and if you do, share it with me in the comments below. But this is how I like to make it. So let me show you what you need first. So we got some peppers kind of chopped up here. I got some green bells and some of these sweet red and orange peppers. Nice little pepper medley there. We got some onions from our garden right here, chopped up. Those will break apart more once we put them in the pan. We got some tomatoes, some fresh tomatoes chopped up. This is a Kellogg's breakfast tomato. Isn't that pretty? So that is like one of these guys here. This one isn't quite ripe. It's close, but quite ripe. So I used another one that was a little softer. That's what we got right here. We've got our okra right here. All three varieties we've got producing right now. The Perkins, the Emerald, and the Jing Orange right here cut up. I kind of like it in a little bigger pieces. Some people cut it thinner. That's just kind of the way we do it. And then we got a jar of tomato sauce we put up last year that we'll be using as well. Alright, so we got the pan here getting hot. Got some little oil in this pan here. The first thing we're going to do is throw in our onions and our peppers. Get those puppies in there. Get a little salt and pepper on those guys. And we don't have to cook these completely, because once we get all this going, we're going to let it all kind of simmer in the tomato sauce for a little while. So we just want to kind of cook these just a little bit. Get them a little tender, but we don't have to cook them all the way. Just a nice hot pan here. We're just going to let those go till they get a little tender, start showing a little bit of kind of brown on them, or maybe just a little bit of yellow. Alright, so our onions are starting to get a little translucent here. Getting a little yellow on them. Still got the pan real hot. We'll cook all this stuff real hot. Now I'm coming in with these heirloom tomatoes. I'm going to dump those in there. Get that last little piece there. I'm going to go ahead and dump our okra in here too. I want the pan real hot for all this. I'm going to save a little bit of this okra for Brooklyn. She wants some in the air fryer.
Thank you.
But there's no exact amount on this stuff. Whatever feels good to you. The trick is to have the pan real hot. We're going to let that go for a little bit. That okra get some nice kind of color on it. Get a little sear on it. And then once that's acceptable, or to the level we want, then we'll add our tomato juice. Alright, this has been going for about 5 minutes now. That I mentioned, on a real hot pan. And the okra's getting kind of tender. And so now we're going to go ahead and add our tomato juice. Or I wouldn't call it juice. What would you call this, honey?
Stewed tomatoes.
Stewed tomatoes. They're a little chunky.
Right.
And I like to go ahead and add a whole jar of these guys here. Just like that right there. And then I'll mix it around. I'm going to turn down our heat and just let this simmer and do its thing. You might need more than one jar of tomatoes, or not a whole jar, just depending on how big a pan you're using, how much okra you're using. And now we just need to let that simmer, let all those flavors just kind of marry together there. Don't need a whole lot of seasonings on this besides salt and pepper, because all this stuff here has so much flavor. And as far as the diced fresh tomato I put in there, you could use anything. You could use a red tomato. Last time I did it, I used a German Johnson. I just had one of those nice Kellogg's right this time. So it doesn't really matter what kind of tomato you use, but it is good. I like to have one of those heirloom diced tomatoes in there. Adds a little extra flavor. So we're gonna let this kind of simmer for 20 minutes or so. I got some cube steak I'm gonna fry. We're gonna put some white rice on, and I'll show you what it all looks like when we prep it up and kind of serve it on a plate. All right, so we just let this okra and tomatoes simmer while we're cooking our rice. Our rice is ready. Now, this is the professional way to do this. So you put your rice in a ring, leave your little hole in the middle right there, and take your okra and tomatoes. And you can't never have too much of this. You put it in the middle just like that right there. And you get your little cube steak here. Just came out of the deep fryer. That's my preferred meat of choice with this right here. And there we go, folks. Okra and tomatoes over rice. Some cube steak. Bon appetit. So it's dinner time around here. Hope you enjoyed the okra video. Hope you enjoyed the okra recipe. I'd love to hear, for those of you out there that know about okra tomatoes and have cooked it before, how you do it. If you got a better way to do it than me, definitely let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell, like and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell. By the beauty of your life,